Welcome to Beyond the Firewall, the business bitecast, where tech and business collide. Get expert insights, real-world strategies, and the latest trends in bite-sized episodes. Stay ahead, stay secure, and explore what's beyond the firewall.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Beyond the Firewall, where we discuss more than just technology today. We're bringing in new thought process to your business, and we're always excited about having one of our favorite guests on our podcast, Ryan Morris. Ryan, how are things going?
Going very well. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.
Always a pleasure. It's always exciting. So, I just remember the last conversation we did and thought about it for like almost 2 weeks, about all the different things that we discussed. And I said, okay, we got to get you back on our show. So,
Excellent. I'm glad that it was thought provoking. That's there's so many big ideas out here. We exist to say not just what's going on, but how do you actually go do something about that stuff? So hopefully we can make it very tangible.
Yeah, and that's interesting you say that. I was reading an article the other day about AI deployments and it not going well for a lot of companies. And, the execution is an interesting one. I see that as a big challenge for a lot of businesses. What do you see these days on these types of projects not going as advertised?
It's funny because for my experience, this feels very classic, right? The way that new technologies come to market, we call it a hype cycle. There's this brand new innovation and everybody says it's going to change the world and save everything. And then there's the naysayers who come out and say, it doesn't actually work. It's not doing anything. And so we go down into this, what they call the trough of disillusionment, and everybody agrees it was never going to work anyway. It's not all that cool. And then somebody comes back and says, it's actually working over here. We're doing something with this. And then we gradually get to a level of enlightenment and real productivity. You can see that in literally every technology that's ever been launched. The big one, e-commerce and the internet, right? Back in the 90s into the early 2000s, everybody was like, I'm just not sure this internet thing's going to work out. It's really not all that valuable. I don't see anything coming from it. A few years later, people turned around and said, I never said that it wasn't going to be a big deal. I was always on board with this. And you go, yep. I see that exact same pattern happening with AI. And not just the general capabilities of, you and me sitting down with a LM and a chat window open and asking it clever questions. I think that functionality is nice, but I don't think it's going to change the world. The application of technology into business workflows, that can change the world. It's just that right now, we're all expecting it to do something magic out of the box, and technology just doesn't work like that, right? There's whether you want to talk about, an application from Microsoft, or you want to talk about your accounting software for your business,
Right.
you install that software and you go, great, now we have accounting capabilities. That means we're going to be profitable, right? No, that's not what that does at all. Somebody has to input the data. Somebody has to use that tool every day and actually run the business according to what the tool enables them to do. Tools don't accomplish anything. It's people using tools that accomplish things. I think that's exactly where we are in the AI world right now.
Yeah, and I see that. I see the comparison to, I remember e-commerce and people had to build platforms. And this is before the era of Shopify, where dozens upon dozens of companies failed at building out multi-million-dollar e-commerce platforms. And, everything was custom built and there was no turnkey solution. This is also before WordPress existed. And being able to turn on a website within hours. So yeah, I agree with you. I think we're in that infancy stage where a lot of money is being spent. Everybody wants to be a pioneer, and thinking that it's going to be a game changer. And at the same time, yet, the developers are still trying to figure some of these tools out. I think the manufacturers are also kind of doing a half-baked launch. Like when you see some of the training and materials that are being launched, it's kind of like, oh, here's our solution. Oh, and by the way, service patches updates are on a weekly, daily basis because we're releasing this faster than we can even develop today. So it's an interesting rat race that everyone's trying to joust, on who's going to be first and what. And, it's it's an interesting time on how much money is being invested by different businesses into the space.
It's phenomenal amounts of money, earth changing amounts of money that are going into the industry. And the hype is appropriately oversized, right? Like if you think about the way that we're hearing news stories and analyst opinions and everything, well, AI is going to change everything. It's going to automate humans out of jobs. There's going to be catastrophic disruption to the economy. There's going to be radical improvement in productivity and profitability for companies. I read one recently where the guys that are the leadership at OpenAI, the Chat GPT platform, they were saying, we foresee a world in which there will be one person entrepreneurial organizations that can achieve $1 billion market valuation because they've organized automation in a way that eliminates the needs for humans and has unbounded growth potential. Okay, probably slow your roll just a little bit. Like that might be the Jetsons version of science fiction in the future. But getting from here to there always takes longer than people think it will. And it always comes in a different form, right? None of us have flying cars, but I would argue that we've radically advanced technology and automation in our society. It's just, it's not what they envisioned it would look like back in the 1960s because they were looking at the future through 1960s eyes. I think right now everybody is looking at AI through enterprise software eyes, and they think, whether it's Dynamics from Microsoft or Salesforce or SAP, they look at it from that perspective and they go, what if I had a piece of software that would just do all of my CRM for me? I don't need to touch it. I don't need to update anything. I can automate customer relationship management. That's the wrong way to look at it. I think you cannot say yesterday's tools automated. It needs to be whole new technologies designed to accomplish specific functional outcomes, and then you will achieve real progress. But to your point, as we opened up today, 95% of all active AI initiatives in corporations around North America, that was the scope of the research, was an article that was published by the research group at MIT, reasonably reputable firm. These guys, they know what's going on. They have a pulse out there. They ran a study, and the study said 95% of all of these initiatives are failing. And you ask why? Well, because those initiatives are using general purpose tools that they're trying to apply to a specific future objective. And that just isn't how technology works. So I will tell you, I believe it will be disruptive. We will see a dramatic overhaul in the nature of jobs that people have, but it's not going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. It's a two-pronged conversation. One, everybody's saying, we're all going to lose our jobs. And I sat there and said, okay, when we looked at the Industrial Revolution, everybody was in the factory and everybody was assembling cars and products by hand. And next thing you know, robots and assembly plants actually changed all of that. Like you go to a car manufacturer today and realistically it's 1/10. Like BMW, I think there's like 1/10 of the people working on the floor. Nobody's actually assembling a car anymore. Where did those jobs go? We're talking millions upon millions of people worldwide that are no longer being there. We're now seeing that conversation about trades. So like, wait a minute, who's still plugging in the electrical sockets and who's connecting the fixtures and the plumber? And there's that big push right now and saying, the office admin job may be done in the next 5 to 10 years. You need to really rethink about what you're going to be doing, because to type an email now or to redraft a letter is not going to need 10 bodies. It'll be one body maybe per office. And the tactile jobs, again, going back almost full circle where we were in factories before, you may be back into trades, you may be into farming, agriculture. At the end of the day, yes, we got combines, but we may not be there, doing, call it, artisanal type of, agriculture. Everyone's going to organic and small crops and stuff like that. So there's a lot of these different industries that didn't exist 20, 30, 50 years ago that existed after the adoption of new technology. New solutions are going to happen. And then Going back to your other statement there about, this $1 billion business with one person, the end of the day, you got to think about it like if we looked at somebody saying tomorrow, what's the new Amazon and using AI to build the new Amazon, you don't need the plethora of people anymore if that infrastructure now is built around an AI architecture. What that looks like tomorrow, I do not know, but it puts food, thought in your head, sitting there going, okay, you know what? I can now create something without having that heavy, lift anymore, which is quite unique. So there's all these moving parts and pieces that, are yet to land. And I think that a lot of speculation is being made about, the doomsday and, whatever or not. But there are a lot of opportunities. It's just a matter of now looking at the other side and how that's all going to play. Very
Yep.
interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting
See,
on that.
and see, I think you're right on target. It is fascinating to consider the possibilities. New technology innovations come, we get new product feature functions, we get new improvements in things that existing technologies can do. That happens all the time. When new innovations, entirely new categories come along, right? The internet and digital communications and e-commerce and, now you're looking at AI. These are rare. These are generational types of changes in technology and what we can even imagine as a possibility. It is absolutely fascinating to sit around and just think about the possibilities and to imagine how your organization today and the things that drive you nuts that you don't know how to do. If you sit around and say, it is possible I could win the lottery. I could just wake up tomorrow and all of my problems will be gone and technology will have fixed everything. That's fun to think about, but that's not actually practical in any way, right? You
Correct.
you think about some of the recent headlines though. So Oracle laid off 3,000 people because they are investing in AI. Salesforce laid off 4,000 people because according to them, they sell agent force and AI is going to just mean they need fewer heads. Microsoft and others out there in the technology world. There's a lot of fear mongering going on right now, like, oh no, AI is going to literally make it impossible for a human to compete and have a job. And that's coming in the thousands, and therefore it's going to be much sooner than any of us anticipate. Yeah, except that those companies still have tens of thousands of employees, actual humans. They're not replacing everybody. And what's probably more likely is that they are kind of making up for the past sins of being really bad at hiring and forecasting demand and all of that. And, I'm a company with 40,000 employees and whoops, I overhired by 4,000 too many. Let's get rid of those people. If you did that 10 years ago, your stock price would go in the dump. Everybody would look at you and go, dude, you don't know how to run a business. Why in the world would you overhire 4,000 people? Except when Oracle announced, when Salesforce announced, because they came out and said, it's not because our business is struggling, it's because AI. Okay, their stock actually went up. I think it's still because they misforecasted and they overhired and they've been dramatically flabby and inefficient businesses. And now technology is going to allow them to tighten that up on productivity. Cool. That's a very good thing. But everybody should probably take a great big deep breath and realize, like you said, there are certain jobs, admin jobs and data entry jobs and very rudimentary information processing jobs. Sure. AI is going to be really good at doing those things, but AI is not going to do every job. And certainly not within the next couple of months.
No, but it is going to be at a faster tidal wave and adoption cycle than some do perceive. I think there are some people say, oh, it's not going to impact me in my life. I'm in my 40s or I'm in my 50s. And by the time this becomes rolled out, it's not going to be an impact to me. And I'm sitting here going, it's not a 5 year or 10 year plan here. This is 1 to 2 years, depending on the industry that you're in, that will be impacted in some capacity where those positions will be restructured.
Yep, I buy that. I buy that completely. I think whoever you are, whatever your business is, or what job you individually do in an organization, if
Mm.
you are not personally, individually using AI and playing around with it, experimenting, figuring out like what can it do? What are the capabilities? What's too much to ask? What's actually productive and realistic with these technologies? If you're not doing that in the context of your own job, your own business right now, you're about to be a dinosaur, right? Like that is a real-time thing, and we all need to be figuring it out. But you got to ask yourself the deeper question there. MIT says 95% of all these projects fail. Why? Okay, I have two answers to that, and I think one's kind of strategic, philosophical, and one is incredibly tactical and real world oriented. The first one is, what is it you're actually trying to accomplish with AI, right? Think about a completely non-technical problem out there in the world. Say you need to jump a motorcycle over a canyon, right? You need to jump, drive this thing really fast, go up a ramp, jump, land on the other side. This is what we're going to try to do. The problem to solve is we got to get all the way across that divide. There's two ways you can approach that. Number one is you can try to do it all in one leap, just one systematic approach, right, and try to jump over this thing. And if you make it, cool. If you don't, if you're 10% of the way there, if you're 50% of the way there, if you are even 99.9% of the way there, but not 100, you still crash and burn. You still wipe out in your objective. The other way to get across that canyon would be, instead of me carrying a backpack, how about I bring along a burro who can carry some of my stuff? How about I bring along a wagon with some wheels so that I don't have to lift things and I can go much faster? I can make incremental progress, even though it doesn't appear revolutionary. I can get across that gap much faster and much more effectively than I am right now. Okay. Take that scenario and apply it to the world of AI. What people appear to be trying to do right now with AI is jump it all at once. I want an agent-based system to automate a workflow function and eliminate the need for human. And it's 10% better, and it's 50% better, and it's 90% better. But at the end, you still get bad answers. You still get inaccurate math calculations. It just doesn't work. And so everybody goes, we tried it. It didn't work. In fact, it had a catastrophic failure where we crashed and burned somewhere short of our objective. Or you could use AI in the context of, we could just take the jobs that people have right now and we could say, what can AI do and how can we make them more productive? We can make progress. And while we're making progress, we can re-envision what the workflow actually is. We can change the inputs, change the work that gets done, and you make it across a little bit at a time. Think of it as automation versus collaboration. I want to either automate and eliminate the need for humans, or I want to collaborate with those humans and make them radically more capable than they have been in the past. I think if
Right.
you took that second approach, 95% of people in a survey would say, yeah, I'm using those tools. It makes me faster. It makes me more productive. Whatever it is I'm trying to do, limited amounts so far, 95% of people would say, I've gotten some benefit out of it. But 95% of people say, I can't jump the whole canyon right now. Right. So if you think of it that way, I think we just have a strategic flaw in how we're approaching it. It is not yet ready to automate entire business flows and eliminate humans. Doesn't mean it's not valuable. It's just not capable of that specific use case.
Right. Yeah, and I see that because a lot of people, between creative marketing, another one that I've seen is the automated attendant. So people are getting a dialer. Actually, I was talking to somebody recently. They were saying that they got a call from a virtual, call it HR agency that was screening them. And the whole thing was AI driven. Like they were calling for the person, they were asking them all the interview questions. Not a single human was actually on the call, and it was all being recorded. And the person that was being interviewed was saying how horrible the experience was. And I sat there and said, well, it's kind of like death by automated attendant. Like, what was it, 30 years ago or 20 some odd years ago when we started getting those automated attendant, press 1 for this and press 2 for that. And it was like back then people were in like death by extension, like go and press 1 for the, you'd be like an hour into it pressing ones and zeros and dialing all the extensions. But same thing with AI today. It's like it's there. I don't think it's fully baked. I know that you want to be pioneering this technology, but at some point in time, it does not replace the individual yet. And how do you gauge that? I find that that is a big challenge in the sense of the financial commitment and the transition doesn't line up. I think a lot of companies have that, they want to cut the tie tomorrow and they just want to, put this as a band-aid. But speaking to a lot of my clients that have tried implementing these voice solutions or sort of personal assistant solutions, majority of them, like you said, failed because the training, the technology, the implementation of it, and the push a button, it doesn't just turn on and run races for you. How do
Yep.
you gauge that? Like, how do you kind of figure all that out? Like, there's no playbook right now. I don't think that anybody has a legit playbook on how to get this thing off the ground.
No, nobody does. And that's what's the interesting opportunity. Quite frankly, the fact that we've got a brand new technology that has phenomenal capabilities and everybody is super frustrated that they can't get access to those capabilities, that just sounds like a need and a market that you could build a solution for and actually sell to solve. I tell you, this is the practical part of it. The only way that you can automate a workflow is if you have local inside knowledge of how that business does its job, right? It's easy enough to say accountants do the following work and sales reps do different work and people in customer service, they have a different set of responsibilities. So let's pick customer service and we can automate the functions of customer service. Except you know that in your own business, customer service is different from how it would be at the local bank, different from how it would be at a national bank, different from how it would be at a manufacturing company or the local movie theater. Every job that has a general function of sales and service and support and finance, those categories are deceptive. They are not done the same way from one organization to another. So while you can begin with a platform of best practice, right? Like these are the things that you should do if you are running a call center and you want to automate customer service. These are the basic functions and categories. But then somebody has to be inside that organization and they need to be able to say, okay, this is how we currently do that. This is the system, the software we currently use, and the data that we have access to. These are our people, these are our customers, and the nature of the relationship we have with them. And now we can take general best practices and weave them into the real world function of an actual business. Okay. That's not something that you will ever get in a million years from OpenAI, from Microsoft, from Claude, from any of these other AI platforms. They have built a general purpose tool that can be valuable to anyone, but out of the box is not valuable to anyone in their specific context. So you have to be able to localize that stuff and say, not just what is the ideal workflow, but how do we do that stuff in our business? And then how do we tie those things together with software? How do we automate the next level of response? How do we reduce the dependence on human labor and pass that over to the system? And by the way, as we're doing that, please don't just freeze the system because it got 75% of the way over the canyon dealing with my customers, but then it crashed. And so we just hung up on the customers because your customers aren't going to be patient guinea pigs in this process, right? If they call you and you've automated, quote unquote, your customer service and they get a terrible experience, they're going to hang up the phone and they're going to call your competitor and they're going to buy from somebody else. You got to do the work right now, and then you have to be re-engineering the work in parallel so that you can make progress, but don't cut over to the automation until you've tested the daylights out of that thing and you know it's actually going to work.
Yeah, it's It's a challenge because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do, or what companies are trying to do, is replace the human element of it. Yet you want the human to train the system to replace itself, right? So I'm not just, a person retiring from the job and I'm going to train my, recent college graduate to take over my position. I'm now going to be teaching a machine to do my job so that nobody replaces me ever again. That's the crazy part. Like in that retrospect, right? Like if you're
Yep.
replacing a senior person, you're training a machine that will never retire now. There will be
Yep.
no replacement for that. But that transition in training, if you know that, you're asking somebody in their mid-career to train a system now to do their job perpetually better, faster, and their job eventually will be obsolete. There's a bit of resentment and a bit of hesitation to give away all that secret sauce. And at the same time, you mentioned it perfectly. Like no one business operates the same. So you could have an admin assistant that will be a admin assistant, but the way you operate versus another company and the way they operate are unique. And so how do you customize it? And who's doing the customization within the organization? Because right now, I'm only going to say that most people will not want to support that because the minute it learns their job, it's going to potentially put their job at risk. It's a
Yep.
very hard
Yeah,
pill.
asking humans to obsolete themselves, that's not a good way to win friends and influence people. They're not going to appreciate or probably willingly participate in your initiative. They're just going to go, no, thank you, boss. I'm going to keep my knowledge to myself. But that's the thing. Can you make it better for the humans? Can you actually make them capable of doing even more? Can you make it so that your business, instead of one person serving one customer, becomes one specialized person who can support 100 customers? Cool. That doesn't mean you need 99 fewer humans. It means you can support 99 extra customers, and that should unlock growth because you combine your people, their intimate knowledge of the process and skills, and then you amplify them and make them dramatically more capable than they have been. You might not hire as many humans in the future as you grow, but it doesn't mean that you have to massively eliminate the people you already have, unless you're doing that for a reason other than technology, right? If you're just like, my books are upside down and I can't afford to keep all these people on, I don't want to be the bad guy, but I can say, and then that'll make everybody think that this is going to be just so much smarter, so much more dramatic. But the real question here is not just how will you get your people to go with you, but who is it that actually knows how to do the systems engineering to take your existing workflow, imagine and then engineer a better workflow, and then deploy that thing without disrupting your business. Do you have that skill? Does somebody on your team have that skill? I don't know. If you do, cool. Keep that person around and leverage them and make them happy and want to stay with your business. But if not, you're going to need help from somebody, not just somebody who runs a restaurant and knows how to improve restaurant business processes. It's somebody who actually knows systems engineering who can leverage technology to dramatically improve your productivity.
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting challenge. And my best analogy that I was given a few clients is, when email came out and everybody was pushing against it and everybody was saying, well, what's important? And the evolution of that between BlackBerry and the little pagers, and people were getting back to emails and communicating faster than snail mail. And I remember like, oh wait, I'm making offer letters through post or through fax, and now it's just coming instantly in this thing called email. And in the beginning, there was this big push and hesitation to adopt it. And then we got to this adoption period that everybody, lawyers, accountants, everybody's accepting email as a form of communication, which was banned from it for a little while. AI has to be perceived more as a tool than a replacement. I agree with you on that, because at the end of the day, it's not ready in that regard. It's years out before full replacement. you know and at the same time, that transition, like your best analogy is not about less people, it's about being able to do more with less, or being able to communicate with more people, and that has happened naturally, and people need to step back. So if you actually
Hmm.
look at it, from 20 years ago or 25 years ago when I got into the workforce, it was slow communication. If you spoke to 10 people in a day, it was picking up the phone, calling, dialing it up manually. And, to get predictive dialers or anything like that was massive. It was 6-digit figure investment. So you were literally finger dialing everybody and you had to find the number, and there was no easy way to do it. And today, with technology like what we're using right now, be it Zoom, be it Teams, be it Google Meet, you can meet now and do face-to-face virtual meetings. What is it, like 10, 20 people a day, just in that context, never mind other forms of communication through social media and other forms. So we're getting to a point where we're now already interacting 100 emails a day, double digits on in-face meetings for via technology. So we're doing more with less thanks to technology. AI is just going to enhance that, and we have to figure out how that integrates into your business and how that will catapult your business as a tool or as a function, not as a replacement. And I think that that is really the crossroads that, like you said, people are buying technology, throwing money at it, thinking it's going to just fix my problem and get rid of all my staff. Whereas it needs to be more on a conversation of as a tool, just like a drill and a screwdriver. You're getting an automated tool that's going to do a lot of functionality for you, but you still got to work it.
Yep. You still have to use that tool, right?
Yeah.
That's the ultimate takeaway that I have. If you're a business owner, a leader in an organization, what you must embrace is the reality that you will still have work to do. It will be different work than you have done in the past. It may be dramatically more productive and effective than you've ever been in the past, but it's not going to do your job for you. It's not going to run your business for you. You still have to be the craftsman who uses the tools, even though they might be dramatically better. You still got to use those tools in order to accomplish something meaningful and valuable to customers who pay you to do the things that you do. My final comment to you is, you have to wonder how many businesses out there are using AI. Probably 100%, right? One way or
Mhm.
another, individuals have downloaded something. I would say we're arguably or statistically, we're within shouting distance of 100% of organizations who are trying something right now. But of those companies, how many of them possess somebody internally who actually knows systems engineering to improve their workflow and leverage these tools? Maybe 1%, right? Like that's a rare skill. And so, in just the way that we look at all previous technologies that have come before, someone invents the technology, somebody
Mhm.
buys the technology, and in between, there is somebody who does the configuration, the design, the brain work to figure out what it should look like, and then the technical work to do the implementation and make sure that it's personalized to deliver real value to the actual customer organization. That's a place that's going to see dramatic job creation in the next couple of years. People who can go to restaurants or manufacturing firms or law firms or accounting firms or hospitals and go to them and say, I understand how you guys do what you do. I also understand these new technology tools that can make you radically more effective. Let's work together to create a personalized solution that makes your business that much more effective. Somebody needs to do that. And not for nothing, if you work in the technology industry, there's, I don't know, a couple of 100,000 people who work for technology vendors around North America. There's several million humans who work for what we will loosely refer to as solution provider organizations, companies that they didn't invent the technology. They're not the customer who uses the technology. They're the connector in between that makes it so the customer can realistically get value and be willing to pay for the technology to begin with. So I would say if you're the customer, find one of those humans or companies that can help you do AI. And if you are somebody who does technology for a living, you might want to learn how to teach people how to use AI at the workflow level, not at the systems level, Step one, step two, step three. How do we do customer service? I can teach you how to do that better with technology. There's going to be a few million of those jobs created.
Yeah, wow, right. I can't believe it, but that is incredible insight and opportunity right there. And I want to thank you for that, because that's an amazing way to end this podcast. I think that anybody listening to this today has got some homework and seeing a massive opportunity there. And I fully agree with you on that. I think there's a massive greenfield opportunity in that exact industry. And I just had this conversation with a peer, and I said, nobody's doing this effectively today. So, or at least nobody that I know of right now that's effectively doing this today. So kudos to you to kind of bring that up to the forefront. But thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Glad to do it. Thank you very much for having me on.
Always a pleasure. And, now I got to go home and think about this for the next couple of days and figure out, okay, what's my next move, because like this is just exactly what I'm drinking right now. So
Absolutely.
It's coming at me not just through a straw, but like through a hose. So like I gotta figure out how to digest all this. So thank you very much for being here today. Thank you everybody for listening. We look forward to getting you on the next one. Again, stay safe, and looking forward to having you on another one.
Thank you very much. Thanks everybody.
Great.